Greetings petrolheads, welcome back to Automation, the car company Tycoon Game. Today I'm gonna be starting with the concepts from 2017 to 2020. Somebody suggested at some point last week that I would do a sort of fan build competition of concept cars while I'm loading this up. I thought about that, but I don't really know what kind of guidelines, what rules, what restrictions to make for that sort of competition, and also what I would be judging your cars on. I just find it a little bit too vague to determine a winner in a competition like that. So here's the 2017 Athena Pegasus, and it has one target, and that's the McLaren 570 GT. Yes, the 570 GT, not the 570S, because the 570 GT is McLaren's first GT kind of supercar. It's based on the 570S, but it focuses more on like comfort and luxury, and it's supposed to be like easier to drive, easier to manage, but still very capable. This being an Athena, of course, you can probably imagine that this would laugh in the face of the 570 GT when it comes to luxury. But let's see what we even got. First of all, it's got a carbon fiber monocoque, carbon fiber panels, mid-longitudinal engine placement, double wishbone suspension front, pushrod suspension rear to give us a lot of like sportiness and drivability. And the pushrod suspension, actually, if we compare this to double wishbones rear, actually offer high comfort, just like the double wishbone setup. I actually thought pushrods would compromise the comfort a little bit, but they don't. So that's nice. Right. This, by the way, is a new body shell in the workshop. It's a 2010's mid-engine supercar body, and I guess, well, without fixtures, it would kind of look like the shape of a Jaguar CX-75, I think. Maybe a little bit of McLaren P1 thrown in there as well, but mainly the CX-75 I can see in this one. Yeah, so this really is a Grand Touring supercar, if you will. It's got rear drive, because I don't think we need like all-wheel drive on this thing. Well, you could probably also use this for a sort of Ferrari 488 or something. So engine-wise, we get a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V8. This is a modern reincarnation of the Rodos V8, a flat plane V8. It's got dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and VVL. It's also made from the lightest materials possible, also on the bottom end, of course. We have 76 BBL profile, which is sporty but not like ridiculously aggressive, with a 9.3 compression ratio, which again for a turbocharged engine is not that bad. Naturally aspirated engine, of course, would be higher. VVT on all cams. It is turbocharged, of course. Ball bearing, water to air intercooler. I thought about the air to air because it's lighter, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not making enough of a difference to justify the loss in power. On this car anyway. Only got 1 bar of boost, obviously could go higher, but I think 580 horsepower is enough if we're trying to compete with a car that has 570. Also, the 570S has 443 pound-feet of torque. This has 451, so a little bit above it as well. Revs to 8500 RPM, just like the McLaren, I think. Dual exhaust setup, straight through mufflers. Don't really think I need a bypass valve. Why straight through mufflers when we were almost always using reverse flow in the past? Well, it's because this is while it is a GT car, it is still also a supercar. You want to have noise in this thing, and the way this thing revs up to those 8,500 RPM, it's so smooth, and you're gonna see it in a second when we test it. 7-speed double clutch, pretty much expected, I think. Electric diff, also expected. +5 quality on the gearbox, because, you know, we need to make sure we keep up to date as far as that's concerned. 245s front, 295 millimeter rear, and 20-inch magnesium rims. 20-inch rims. I was kind of debating that between 19 and 20-inch because while 19-inch will give us more comfort and slightly better drivability, and but I chose the 20-inch rims instead because it does increase performance quite significantly, or more than you'd expect anyway. Carbon ceramic brakes all around, 4 pistons front, 3 pistons rear, same size front and rear, because that makes for a really good balance on this particular car. It seems it's just always, it just also always depends on so many things, what brake setup you want on a car. And on this one, because of this particular weight distribution, it seems that 3/10 front and rear is totally fine, and then with 4 pistons front and 3 pistons rear, we find a really good balance. We have quite a bit of downforce going on with the fully cloud under tray that has +100 downforce, and then some wing angles front and rear. Only have lips, 1 lip up front and 1 on the rear, no wings, so it's not gonna make massive downforce, but it's certainly enough to keep the car stable at high speeds, and I think that's something you do want. Handmade interior, luxury heads-up display, infotainment system, all driver assists, advanced safety, and then active sport springs. I chose these over active comfort just for even higher drivability, well, much higher drivability, and sacrificing a little bit of comfort. But even so we have 56.8 comfort, we have 39.2 drivability, which is really good for a car like this, I think. 74.8 sportiness just kind of speaks for itself. And even so, this car isn't necessarily tuned for lap times on the suspension. We have we don't have a particularly aggressive setup here. And overall it weighs just under 1,500 kilograms. It is heavier than the McLaren, which weighs 1,350, I think. So this weighs about 130, 140 kilograms more. But the McLaren will do 0 to 100 in 3.4 and a quarter mile in 11.1 seconds. This does 0 to 100 in 3.2 and a quarter mile. In 10.9. So it is quicker there. It's also faster in terms of top speed, because this will reach 350 kilometers an hour, which is 217 miles an hour, whereas the McLaren will only reach 204 miles an hour. Pathetic, I know. But where the McLaren does outshine the Athena is around the racetrack. Because it is a McLaren, it has to perform well even if it's a GT car. This, on the other hand, I mean, well, it'll probably be the nicer car to drive, to travel long distances with, but around the racetrack it's not going to be as potent as the McLaren. Now I didn't find a lap time for Laguna Seca of the 570S, but this will only do it in 138.3, and I imagine that the 570S is going to be quicker. Even so, I think that because the 570S is doing pretty well, I also think the 570 GT will have a lot of followers, a lot of people who appreciate it. This would be like a more exotic alternative to it, if a McLaren is not exotic enough for you, and it'll actually be cheaper. This costs just $185,400, which is of course nothing. It's like super cheap. This car is, yeah, sure, but it's less than a McLaren 570S, as far as I know, and that it is at least by, and it's at least $10,000 less, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, in a price class like this, honestly, that doesn't really matter that much. But I'm just saying, you get more power, more straight line performance, and more comfort for less money. Economy is also decent on this car, given its performance. Although it would certainly benefit from something like cylinder deactivation, which isn't in the game yet, of course, which would bring this down easily to less than 10 liters per 100 kilometers. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, the aerodynamics. If I'd actually go down to 0 downforce on the under tray, and then to the setup that I originally had in mind with this car, which is 20 wing angle front, 30 rear, you would see that this would reach 370 kilometers an hour, 372 even. So with just the aerodynamic tweaks, this would actually become an insanely fast hypercar, even as far as top speed goes. And it just keeps going and going and going. Yeah, well, but the reason I didn't keep this setup is because this way we're actually making lift, and even though like negative 12.5 kilograms of lift at 200 kilometers an hour, at 350 plus or so, that would probably be, I guess, 50 kilograms of lift on both ends, pretty much. That's nowhere near enough to actually make this car take off, because it does weigh 1500 kilograms. The combined lift would have to be higher than the car's weight if it were to take off. So there's no issue there. But it would still. It just feels. It just inspires a lot more confidence if the car actually feels like it's pressed back down on the road when you're going fast, as opposed to the car kind of starting to feel like it's lifting. It's lifting its nose ever so slightly off the ground without you doing anything. Yeah. Wait. Yeah, actually, I think I'm gonna keep the gearing here because this will still reach 350 kilometers an hour, and this way it'll use less fuel too with the longer gear ratio. So I'm actually gonna keep it this way. 10.4 liters per 100 kilometers. That's for a supercar, for a super GT, if you will. That's actually really good. In terms of running costs, obviously it's expensive to service, it's expensive to insure. Doesn't actually use that much fuel because, well, it's just not as thirsty as you would expect a car of this performance level to be. And then also, of course, you're not gonna be driving this car every day. In all likelihood, at least. I mean, you could. You have all the comfort, all the features you'd like for everyday driving, and some more, of course, because we do have the best entertainment possible in here. But it's probably not gonna be all that great for like big shopping trips. For a daily grocery, sure, you can probably fit that in the front bonnet, in the front boot. But honestly, I mean, if you're just gonna go to work, you don't have to be scared of driving this thing at all. Especially because of the fact that if you wanna really go slowly and not risk anything, keep it below like 3,500 RPM and you'll be totally fine. Because at 3,500 RPM, let's see, you only get 195 horsepower. You should be able to handle that, I think. Then again, this is not meant to be going slowly, although it can quite easily, quite comfortably. So target is the 570S. You guys let me know what you think. Would people buy this over the McLaren? Yes or no? Why/why not? Hope you enjoyed this episode of Automation. Leave a like or a comment if you did. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.